Commissioner, get to safety.
I can't just leave these people.
Next gen. So here's my review for Batman Telltale. So overall, I do enjoy the Telltale games. You get like a really good story with them. I like it. They're relaxing. It's kind of like watching a TV show or an interactive comic book, and you get to make dialogue decisions as if you're in a BioWare game that then have effects throughout the whole story. I do like that, and they usually come paired with good characters and great action sequences. Now, this game does have a lot of those elements, but I wouldn't say at the quality of many of the previous Telltale games that I have played. So episode 1 kind of starts out familiar if you've seen Batman Begins, where he takes out all the thugs the first time you see Bruce Wayne as Batman. It's kind of a similar way. Batman's taking out a bunch of thugs and you get introduced to Catwoman. This is a pretty good sequence and it is action heavy, but man, does the pacing take a huge hit right after that, because then we transition into Bruce Wayne. The pacing does improve over the course of episode 1 as we keep going with it. And I really enjoy the music. It's very reminiscent of the Arkham games, and I like the graphical style of this game in general. One of the cool things that I did notice in this episode is how, with Batman, he is the greatest detective, so it's nice to see him like piecing together a crime scene in this, where you're pretty much taking a bunch of objects and you're putting them together to see if you can make a connection. I like that, being able to, go around the environment, investigate a little bit. It suits his character, and you don't see that as much in the video games. It's usually, oh, he's the world's greatest detective, and he does his detecting by by punching people. So like, that's kind of cool that they incorporated that in the game, the investigating, not the fisting. Now, with this game exploring both Bruce Wayne and Batman, I do like that there are some really good instances of the game really letting you choose the duality in it. So they give you these situations where it's like, well, if I went as Bruce Wayne, maybe I could tackle this situation this way, or if I went as Batman, I could tackle this situation this way. So a little bit of replay with that, and I do like that they give you those options because he does have that as a character. And also, there's some really good action sequences throughout this game. There's a particularly awesome action sequence that so it has Bruce Wayne and it has Selina Kyle, and they're fighting a bunch of people in a bar. It's one of my favorite ones. It happens in episode 2. And what I like is it's really entertaining, but also one of the best parts of the narrative is when Bruce and Selina are together. Whenever it's Catwoman and Batman together, what I like with this is like they just have great chemistry. They have some of the best chemistry in the game, and maybe where the story might be lacking, this part right here strengthens the narrative for the most part. Most of their encounters are particularly good. There's one bit we'll get into later on that I wasn't the craziest about, but I will say that Laura Bailey, who voices Catwoman, does a great job. She's awesome, she's seductive, she's great. One of the best Catwoman. I really enjoyed her. I always enjoy her as a voice actress, and I thought she did a great job for Catwoman. But I also like some of the nice little touches that the game puts in, where like you'll return to the Batcave, and then bats will be, so there'll be like this big wide shot, you see the Batcave, and then you get to see all the bats keep going through. I like that. It's a nice little touch, especially going back to the Batcave. I remember seeing it in the animated series and some of the movies, so I like seeing it here. And what's also neat too is in some of the action sequences, you get to choose how Batman is going to take out a thug. So maybe he might take the desk instead of taking his face and putting it into the wall. I like these little decisions, and I hope they expand upon these in the sequel. I also say too, is the relationships and the conversations that take place between Batman and Alfred and Jim Gordon are also really good. And Jim Gordon is a huge highlight in this, and a badass at times. Really like Jim Gordon in this one. So let's start getting into the flaws. One big thing that I think hurts this game a bit is its pacing. It's a bit weird. So episode 1, it's like, oh, starts off on a high. You get some pacing issues a little bit, kind of corrects itself. Then we get to episode 2, which I arguably think is like the best episode out of the 5. You know, you have great pacing, it moves really fast. It is the shortest episode out of all of them, but it also has some of the best stuff going on. I would say 3 through 5. There's just a lot of off pacing where stuff will be happening and then stuff takes forever to really get going, and then towards the end something major will happen. It's kind of weird. It's like as if it has like filler pacing, but there are stuff going on, it's just not that interesting. And some other things too is that I'm open to different interpretations of superhero characters. That's part of what makes the comics and everything like that really interesting. It's like, oh, I don't like Superman like this, I like Superman like that. I like Batman like this, but I don't like him like that. And that's okay, because they can kind of do these different alternate universes with characters. So that's fine to have different interpretations. I wasn't crazy about what they did with Batman in this game. Now, for me to really get into the nitty-gritty with why I didn't like it, I'm gonna have to get into spoilers. So this is gonna be a huge spoiler warning. So here you go, spoilers, 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 and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of it. So if you don't want any spoilers, haven't played the first season of Batman, here we go. So spoilers. So with this, the one big thing that they change with Batman is they change his parents. They kind of turn them into criminals. They were working with the mob, and his father isn't such a good guy. He was doing experiments and all this stuff on people in Arkham. Now, I'm not crazy about this with them changing the Waynes and then turning them into not so good people. And now Bruce Wayne is trying to now come out from under like this burden that his family has now put him under with all this like past history. I'm not crazy about that. The thing that I like about the Waynes is that they were a beacon of hope, that these good people trying to do good things, and then they died, and Bruce Wayne looks at his parents, he sees that as like a huge burden for himself, but he also sees like the good and what he needs to do to then try and save the city. So I think this sort of hurts his backstory a little bit by changing his parents. And by changing his parents like that, it honestly makes it feel less Batman and more like, you know, a traditional action adventure kind of movie thing going on here, and less like Batman. Batman is anything but traditional. Another thing I wanted to talk about is Troy Baker. He does the voice acting for Batman and Bruce Wayne. Now normally I really love the guy, I think he's great, but here I find him very inconsistent, especially in the first episode. Sometimes he feels like he's just in a different game than the rest of everybody. Like some people, like they're very excited, Bruce Wayne, very mute for some stuff, and I didn't really understand that. It didn't fit the situation. So I don't know, sometimes he just kind of sounded sleepy, to tell you the truth. And I know he can do a great job in the Batman universe because he played the Joker in Arkham Origins and did a great job with that. Basically sounded like a young Mark Hamill. But here, kind of inconsistent. He does get better as the season goes on, but not my favorite Bruce Wayne or Batman voice actor. So another thing is, in this story, they tell you that Batman and Penguin were childhood friends, and then they kind of get reacquainted a bit in episode 1 and throughout the whole season. So they tell you that they are friends. When they meet, there's no chemistry there. There's nothing that happens, there's nothing, we can't connect to it. And they tell us all the time that they are friends, but it's not shown throughout the game, and I think this is a huge weakness in the writing and in the storytelling within the story. There is a flashback that happens in episode 5 where you get to see them as kids, but I feel like something like that should have happened way earlier in the game so you can kind of connect with this relationship. I think it would have been better to show a flashback or two, them being friends, and then you see how they're at odds with each other now. It would have made more sense. Instead, it's just like, yeah, we're friends, but you don't act like it. Yeah, but we're friends. Yeah, but you should kind of like, you know, like give him a hug or something. Like, so I wish there was better chemistry there. The game features Carmine Falcone, really good mob boss, and played wonderfully by the voice actor who does Sully from the Uncharted series. He does a great job and he's a huge highlight, especially in episode 1. But what sucks is they kill him off right away in episode 2, so we lose out on this awesome character who was really interesting. And I mean, like, the shock of, oh my god, he died, is good, but after that, you're like, why'd you kill him off so soon? You should have kept him. He was a huge asset to the game. Now, along with that, like I said, Catwoman's really good, and I really like 90% of what they do with the character, but she kind of just leaves at the end, and it's not like one of those situations where she's like, well, I'm gonna leave, and then she comes back at the right moment and helps out Batman, because I feel like she would probably help out Batman, especially after their little relationship that they had in this season. But she doesn't, she just kind of leaves, so it's like, oh, the story, it's building, it's going really good, and then fizzes out like a wet fart, and I just wish it could have been a little bit better. So here's hopes for season 2. I really did not like this interpretation of Two-Face in the game. He starts out, he's a friend with Bruce, and then his change to Two-Face is just so abrupt. It's not like, take for example in the Nolan film with The Dark Knight, there's this subtle darkness to Harvey in that. There's just, it's under there, the guy's being really good, but we kind of get glimpses at, all right, so there is a bit of darkness in him that he's kind of keeping at bay. We don't really see that. He kind of just comes across as a whiner at many points in the game. and Two-Face is anything but a whiner. And I didn't like what they did with his character because he really just gets pissed off that Bruce and Selina kind of hook up in the game and they start having a relationship. And he sobs. I mean, at one point you just run by him and he just starts crying, and it's like not even something to cry for, because I'm a man, but yeah, there are times when you need to cry and it's perfectly fine. You know, you watch a sad movie, you cry. You step on your favorite game, you cry. I get it. But like, he just cries. Batman just runs by him and he's just like, oh my god. And it just doesn't make any sense. I don't like what they did with Two-Face. Hopefully they can make him a bit better in the next season. Another issue was with Vicky Vale, who's a reporter in the Batman universe, and they turned her into the main villain in this game. I don't know why. She's like, oh, Bruce's parents like did experiments on my parents and I'm mad, so I'm gonna become a supervillain. And I'm like, how cliched can you get? And I mean, like, I like cliche when they play it up, but like Batman, he's got a lot of awesome villains to play with. That universe has a lot of awesome stories. And this is the best you could come up with, is you take like a character from there and you're like, oh, I have an idea. We'll turn it into a cliched villain. How about using any of the other villains? No, we're gonna do that. We're gonna turn Two-Face into a pansy. So that's what they did here. I wasn't crazy about the Vicky Vale twist or anything like that. I actually felt like that hurt the game than rather did anything for it. This game also had a bunch of performance issues, so I'd finished the first episode, and usually you can go from the next episode right into the next one, but here it was you finished and the game just froze. It just was like, that's it. We don't want you to play the rest of the game because, you know, after episode 2 it's just not that great. And then, so I had to close out the application, go right back in. Same thing happened to episode 2, and I'm like, come on! This game's been out for a while. 3 through 5 were fine, like they worked perfectly fine. I didn't have anything like that. But there were many instances where certain sections of the game would just run like a slideshow. It was really choppy. I mean, just like the video I showed in the beginning, that happens in episode 5 and it just runs like that. I'm like, where was your QA department on this? Like, no one watched it and they were like, that is just not as smooth as I would want it. No, it's cool, it's cinematic effects. Overall, yes, I had a bunch of issues with this, but I will say that it is entertaining. I have lots of issues with the story, and I do think that it would have helped the game if they included less villains in it, and maybe just focus on, say, like 2 or 3, or even 1. Have a really good battle of wits with just one villain. I think that would have been really interesting. But here, I will say, you will get an entertaining time with it, and you may enjoy this version of Batman more than me, and that's perfectly fine. Different interpretations for different people, that's fine. But I will say, just for me, it could have been better in the story department, and definitely in the performance department. So, since I've seen online people really have liked the Batman Telltale, and there are people that really don't like the Batman Telltale, let me know in the comments below, do you like Batman Telltale? And if you did, what you enjoyed about it, and if you didn't like it, let me know what you didn't like about it. Let's have a conversation. And I want to say thank you very much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, and if you'd like to see more content like this, please subscribe. I'll see you next time.